My name is Rajiv, and today I'm going to show you the demo on configuring distributed availability group between two sets of servers which are not in same domain. So my first set of servers are in a different domain called contoso.com, and this set of servers or this environment has a domain controller called WinServer 2016 DC. The IP is 10.10.1.1. Now I have three SQL servers running on Windows 2016, and these are their names and IP. WinSQL 16-1, 10.10.1.10 is the IP. The second node is WinSQL 16-2, 10.10.1.11 is the IP. And the third is WinSQL 16-3, 10.10.1.13. These are part of a OS cluster called Win16 SQL 16-CLU, and the IP is 10.10.1.2. On these servers, I have created an availability group, and the listener name is SQL 16gr1, and the IP of the listener is 10.10.1.3. So this is my first environment. Okay, pretty much simple. Now my second environment is this, which is mycorp.com domain. Similar to the previous environment, it has a domain controller called WinServer 16gr2-DC. gr2 stands for group 2, and the IP is 10.20.1.1, similar to this one. The only difference is it's 10.10, this one is 10.20. Now in this environment, I only have two nodes instead of three. For the sake of PC, I'm running these virtual machines on. So just to save some resources, I have only two nodes in this environment. So the first server name is Win16 SQL 16 gr2. gr2 stands for group 2-1. The IP is 10.20.1.10. The second server is Win16 SQL 16 gr2-2. And the IP is 10.20.1.1. Now these two servers are part of Windows cluster called Win16 SQL 16 gr2-C, and the IP is 10.20.1.2. And the availability group listener is called SQL 16 gr2, and the IP is 10.20.1.3. So we are going to configure a distributed availability group between these two environments. Now, before we move to the demos, I will try to explain one more thing in this section. Now let's focus over here. As you can see, we have SQL nodes mentioned over here. That's node 1, node 2, node 3 from the first environment, and then node 1 and node 2 from the second environment. Now, they can obviously ping each other, right? But in order for data to travel from one server to another server, right, SQL Server has to communicate with another node using the endpoints. By default, HADR underscore endpoint is created when you configure the availability groups, and that endpoint is used to communicate between the nodes. But that endpoint is limited in this section only, because this one has its own endpoint. Now, in order to make this section or this set of servers communicate with this set of servers, we have to create or use a mechanism that can authenticate on the endpoints for secure communication of the transaction logs. We can do this by creating a certificate and a login, and then altering that endpoint to use that certificate to authenticate. And if that endpoint can authenticate using the certificate, it will allow the connection. So the same topology or method was used in database mirroring for high availability. Assume that this will be our global primary, and this will be our primary forwarder. Okay, so on global primary, we will create this certificate, this login, and authorize that certificate to the endpoint and grant that login the permission to authenticate. And then we replicate this certificate and logins and alter the endpoint in same way over here as well on our primary forwarder. So this way, this server can communicate with this one. So global primary can communicate with primary forwarder. Now there is a problem in this. Let's suppose if your global primary is no longer a global primary, it's failed over to this server. That means this server becomes your global primary, and this server doesn't know how to communicate or how to send transaction logs on the primary forwarder. To solve this problem, what you can do is you create the certificates and logins and alter the endpoint on global primary first, and then pass that information to all the nodes over here as well and over here as well. With this method, each node can send data to any other node. Doesn't matter where the availability group is primary, or where your global primary is, or where your primary forwarder is. I'll show you more about this in the demo section. Let's get started and move to our demo section. Okay, so now I'm connected to my first machine. Let me show you the name. The name of this machine is WinSQL 2016-1. IP is 10.10.1.10. And if I ping my other server, which is 10.10.1.11, we will see that that would be server win SQL 16-2. Okay. And if I do the same, so that would be win SQL 16-3. And I'm on contoso.com domain. Right. So that is my one domain, one first set of server. And the second set of server I have is starting from 10.20 subnet. As you can see, this is WinSQL 16 to the 2016-3. Now, if I ping 10.20.1.10, that's my another set of server. And in order to configure the distributed availability group, you must be able to communicate with other nodes, right? So the second set of server I have is Win16 SQL 16 GR2. GR2 is group 2-1. And same goes for the other server in the second set. This will be GR2-2. And as you can see, I can definitely connect or ping to these servers. So the connectivity is already established between all the nodes. So as you can see, I'm getting reply. So let me show you the availability group I have configured on first set of server. So AG SQL 16-GR1 is my availability group name, and SQL 16-GR1 is my listener name. And I have AG test SQL 16 database, and this one is currently secondary. So let me fail over this availability group to node 1 so things would be easier to understand. And the failover is done. So I'm on 16-1 from this node. Let me connect to the secondary, connect to this another secondary, and I'm connected to -2 and -3. So these are the servers from my set 1 or contoso.com. Let's see the dashboard, and everything is green. Now connect to another domain, which is mycorp, and the server starts with GR2-1. And next connect to the second server in the mycorp. Let's see the availability group I have over here. So I have availability group called AG-SQL 16-GR2-1. I have a database called AG-test-SQL16. Let's do one thing, remove this database, because for distributed availability group, we need a blank availability group. And let's make sure it is removed from the secondary replica as well. The listener I have got here is SQL 16-GR2, and the IP for this one is 10.20.1.3. And yeah, so let's refresh this database, and let me drop this database as well from both the servers. Okay, so now I don't have any database. So what I want is I want to replicate this database using distributed availability group. The database name is AG-test-SQL16. So this database is available on these 3 servers, but I want to replicate this database, this availability group set, or in other words, I want to replicate this database in another domain called mycorp.com. So the first step is to configure the certificates and the login. So my global primary would be this server, WinSQL 2016-1, and primary forwarder will be Win16 SQL 16-GR2-1. Now, if I create certificate over here and login over here and share those details with this server, so this server will be able to communicate with this server and would be able to send the transaction logs from here to here, right? But what we want, if you want, in case of failover of availability group, any node participating in the availability group can send data to other domain or other set of servers. What you should do is you create the certificate and log in on one node, and then share that certificate and log into all of the replicas. Doesn't matter, which domain it is part of. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a certificate and log in on this server, and assign or authorize that login to connect to the HADR endpoint, which you can see over here, which is already configured, HADR endpoint to connect. And then we will do the same step on all the replicas. Now, on the secondary replicas or all other replicas, instead of creating the certificate, we will restore the certificate. Okay, things will become more clear when we'll do this in practical. So let's get started. So connecting to my global primary. So I'm going to create, I'm going to paste some commands. Oh, yeah. Okay, so first I'm going to, in order to create a certificate, I need a master key. I'll create a master key first, then I'll create a certificate called DAG underscore certificate. Then we will back up this certificate and with a strong password, and then we'll create a login called DAG login. It's a SQL login, so I'm providing a password over here. Then we'll create a user called DAG user for this login, DAG login. Then I'm going to alter the endpoint which is already created. I'm going to alter it, and I'm going to specify that for the authentication mode or authentication method, by default it is Windows negotiate, and here I'm telling it that you should also add a certificate authentication. So that means you can, or this anyone has authorization to this certificate can connect to this endpoint and use this endpoint to transfer the data. So I'm telling endpoint to to do the authentication using certificate if it's available, else do the Windows negotiate authentication. On the next line, I'm connecting. I'm basically assigning permission. I'm basically assigning a grant connect on this endpoint to my login, and then I'm going to restart the endpoint. So this is what we are doing on primary replica, or I would say global primary. Okay, so let's get started. So first I'm going to create a master key. Okay, now I'm going to create a certificate called DAG underscore certificates. That's done. I'm going to back up this certificate called DAG certificate to my C drive using the private key and strong password. So let's go to C drive. You can see it's already there. Let's delete it. That's from the demo which I did earlier to make sure everything is working. So now let's take the backup of the certificate, and if you go back, now you will see the certificate backup is taken. So scroll down. Now we are going to create a login and then a user like that. I'm now going to alter the endpoint to authenticate using the DAG certificate. It's running. Now I'm going to grant connect on this endpoint to DAG login, and let's restart our endpoint. So that's step one on global primary. So now I can move to my another set of server in different domain, which is mycorp.com, and do the similar thing. Not the same, because I will create a master key over there. I will, instead of creating the certificate, I have to restore that certificate or import that certificate. Rest of the steps will remain same. But if I only distribute the certificate and logins to this server only, then my global primary, which is WinSQL 2016-1, will be only able to communicate with Win16 SQL 16 GR2-1 server. And let's suppose if there's a failover of the availability group from 1 to 2, then my connection will break, and distributed availability group will not work, and the global primary will not be able to send the data because it won't be able to communicate, or because the C-2 server doesn't have the certificate or login or authentication on HADR endpoint, right? So what I'll do is I'll configure this DAG certificate and login and authenticate and alter the endpoint and connect and grant connect on endpoint to DAG login on each of the server I have in my setup. Okay, so let's start with the server 2, new query. Yeah, let's see if it works. Yeah, so the same steps. First, we are going to create master key. I may get an error over here because I have already created a master key before, while I was performing the doing my testing. So master key is already created. Let's create a login. Now we are going to create a login and restore the certificate. So the certificate doesn't exist on this server. So what we have to do, we have to copy the certificate on each of the server. So this is how I'm going to do. Let's copy this, copy, and you may see these files already lying on C drive or on another servers. As I said, I was doing the testing before making this video, so we will delete the old files and replace them with the new ones. So WinSQL 2016 second server, as you can see, I'm going to delete this, the backup as well of the database. On third server, delete thing and paste it. Now we are going to my corp server, which has a bit different name, Win16, then SQL 16, and then GR2-1. Yeah, so delete these, paste, and then the last server in my corp is 2. Delete this and paste the new one. Okay. So now back to our second server in contoso.com. So we already created the login. Now we are going to restore the certificate. So this is the location where we pasted the certificate. So let's go ahead and restore it. Yeah, the certificate is created successfully. Now we are going to alter the endpoint and It's running. And then we are going to grant connect on endpoint to do DAG login and then restart the endpoint. So now I'll do is, so now the certificate and login is distributed or copied to -2 server, and I have 3 more servers to go. So let's do it quickly. I'll just paste and run it, and I will definitely get the error for creating the master key because of my demo. But yeah, rest of the things completed. And let's close this one, and let's go to my core server. Let's do one thing. Let's remove because I don't need master key in my environment. It's already created. Okay. And this is the last server. Yeah, cool. So we have created the certificate and login on all the servers I have, and altered the endpoint to use certificate to authenticate, and restarted the endpoints. So that's what we have done so far. We have, refresh this, we have a database called AG test SQL 16, right? And I have this database over here as well because it's part of availability group, but we don't have this database on our second set of server or in different domains. So what I'll do is I'll take the backup and restore this database on these 2 servers. And we have to keep this database in restoring state on these 2 servers because we have to configure distributed availability group, and the database should be restoring state to start receiving the data from global primary. Okay, so let's take the backup, or let me check. I have already taken the backup, so I'll go. I think you can restore the database, but I have the backup already. Yeah. So what I have to do is I have to copy this backup on these 2 servers. So I can do this remotely. That is win 16 SQL 16 this on C drive. I'm going to paste this file, and then on 2 I'm going to paste this file. Okay, now we have to restore this database. So coming over here. Restore database this from disk, the name of the backup file, okay, with no recovery. Done. Now we have a transaction log backup to restore. So trn done. So the database will be here in restoring state. Now I will copy the same command, paste it over here. DAG is the extension for full backup in my scenario. Usually PKB, so trn. And we have got the database restored over here as well. Yep, cool. Now we can close these sessions. We will come back. So we are currently on -2. Yeah, we don't need this. So now we are going to configure distributed availability group. And let me paste this query. Okay, so I'm going to call my distributed availability group dist.ag, and the availability group name on the source is AG SQL 16-gr1, AG SQL 16-gr1, and on the destination side, the availability group is AG SQL 16-gr2-1, AG SQL 16-gr2-1, and this is the listener name. So if I go here, SQL 16-gr1, 16 SQL 16-gr1.com, the endpoint is listening on 5022, and the listener name over here would be SQL 16-gr2, SQL 16gr2.mycorp.com, and the listener name, sorry, the listener port is 5022. So I'm going to create the availability group on this server, which will be our global primary for now. So I will click on execute. So availability group is created on this server now. So we have to tell the other server, or we have to add this server into distributed availability group. So what I'll do is I will copy the command for secondary. So this is my primary forwarder. I'm going to join this server or this availability group into the distributed availability group. So the name is distributed availability group. That's our source. That's our destination. Again, same thing. I'm using seeding mode equals to manual. Seeding mode equals to manual. There's no automatic failover and distributed availability group. When you have a large databases, I would say in gigabytes, keep this setting to manual and restore the database manually, as I did in my environment or test environment. So if I, without running this command, if I refresh the availability group, right, and you don't see anything, and if I refresh over here, you will see the distributed availability group, and it shows disconnected. I will tell you the reason why. So now let's add our mycorp server to the distributed availability group. Executed successfully. Now refresh. So now you can see distributed availability group is being shown over here. Now, when it comes to a normal availability group, if you expand replicas, you will see the nodes, you will see the actual server names. But when it comes to distributed availability group, you will see the listener names, right? Now you can see my secondary AG equals 16 GR21 is not connected. It's showing the red cross. And over here as well, if I refresh, you can see it's showing as a red cross. That means there's some connectivity issue. Basically, they are not able to talk to each other. So the cause is, let's do one thing. Let me grab the IP of the listener. So I'll go to GR2 in my corp domain. That's my listener. And the IP is 10.21.3. Let's ping this IP from our global primary. So 10.20.1.3. You can see it can ping the IP. Now let's ping our listener name. So what it is trying to do, it is trying to resolve SQL 16gr2.mycorp.com, but my server is on contoso.com. It can ping the IP because the IP is reachable, but it doesn't know the name or the IP. It basically, it doesn't know the IP for this listener name, and it cannot resolve this name into an IP. That's why, it's taking time, and that's the problem is. So it says ping request could not find the host. So in order to make sure your availability group works and you don't see this red cross, you have to make sure all the servers can resolve the listener names. So for contoso.com servers, for these 3 servers, they should be able to resolve this listener name to IP. And for these 2 servers, they should be able to resolve this listener into an IP. So how we can do this is by opening the notepad with run as administrator. And if you open a file and basically go to this PC, C drive, Windows, System 32, drivers, etc., and then select all files from here and open the host file. Here you have to tell that the IP for this listener is this. So I'm going to uncomment this and save it. And now if I ping the listener name, it can resolve to this IP. So now we have to do this thing. Now only the global primary, which is WinSQL 2016-1, this is my current global primary, can resolve the listener name to IP. What about other servers? We have to do the same thing on other servers. You can RDP to each server and then change the host file, or I'm doing it remotely. So win to SQL 2016-2 $, yeah, and Windows System 32 drivers etc. Select all files, host, and I'm just removing this comment, and because I already added these lines because I performed my testing. Okay, now we have to go to 3, and we are in contoso.com currently. Yeah, so we are telling contoso.com how to resolve this listener, which is in mycorp.com. Right now, we have told contoso.com servers to resolve the listener, but what about the other set of servers? They have to communicate back with the contoso servers, right? So we have to do the same thing on this, but the listener name will be different. Basically a vice versa thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my name win1620, that is GR2, and our server is 1. Yeah. So all files, host over here. I'm telling that 10.10.1.3 is the IP for listener in contoso.com. Okay. Save, open file. Now go to server 2, same thing, and close. So these 2 can resolve the contoso listener. These 3 can resolve the mycorp listener now. Okay, so let's see. Let's refresh. Always on, distributed. And here you go. So now there's no red cross. Verify the same on other side. As you can see, it's already there, but it's not refreshed. So let's refresh this, and you can see the red is gone. So basically now they are able to communicate with each other. Okay, so now so far we have created the certificates, logins, and distributed that certificate logins on all the replicas, and changed HADR endpoint to authenticate using that certificate, and restarted all the HADR endpoints on all the servers. restored the copy of database in restoring state on these two servers, configured distributed availability group. All the nodes can communicate with each other, added an entry into the host file for the listener name resolution. Now we have to add the database into the distributed availability group. So we will go to our primary forwarder, which is gr2-1. We are going to say that add this AG test SQL 16 to distributed availability group. And it is added. And if I see and refresh this, it is set to synchronized. But there's one more thing we have to do. If I see the dashboard, it's complaining that the GR2 is not synchronizing. Why? It is added into this, the database is added into this availability group. And in this availability group, we have this as a secondary replica. We told SQL Server to add this database in the distributed availability group here. But this database also needs to be added on secondary replica. So what we'll do is we will go to this secondary replica. So we have two options. We can tell that, let me copy the name of the database here. We can tell this replica, secondary replica, to add this database into the availability group. So there are two ways. The first one, this one is from using the command line. Sorry, not the command line, using DSQL script. And the other way is to, you go here, database, right click, join to availability group, and click OK, and wait for it. So now you can see it's green. So if I go back to GR1 and I just refresh and look at the dashboard, yeah. So everything is green. Now let's do some testing. Okay. So put this. Now what I'll do is I'll make sure the database is readable. Readable, yeah, I can read it. So let's do one thing. I'll go to my database tables, and I have one value in it. So let's insert into test values. Retrieve, and let's do one thing. Come over here, tables, right click, select. So as you can see, currently there is only one row in the table. So this is my global primary, and this is my primary forwarder. Now I'm going to add a row into my global primary, and let's come back and hit execute, and my primary forwarder, and you can see it's added over here. Let's make sure what we have got on our secondary, which is gr2-2, and over here as well, it's same. So that means data is flowing from here to here, and then from here to here. So this is how you can configure distributed availability group in different domains. Now, remember I told you to add the distributed availability group certificate. Now remember I added the certificates and login on all the replicas. So first, what I'm going to do, I'm going to fail over the availability group from this server to this server within the contoso.com, and then we will fail over the distributed availability group from contoso.com to mycorp.com, and then we will fail it back. So let's go to our global primary, which is WinSQL 2016-1. Go to availability groups, right click, failover, show. I'm going to move it to -2, connect, next, finish. So now availability group should fail over, and this should not break anything in the distributed availability group. So this is secondary, okay, and let's refresh this, go to availability group and expand. So this is primary, and you can see distributed availability group, and let's expand our availability replicas, and we should not see a red cross. Yeah, as expected, they are able to communicate with each other. So now let's do one thing. Let's add a row from our new global primary. Yeah, not sure what was running, but yeah, that's 2. So I am on -2. Let's put a test value in it. Test. Oh, I have to select the database name. Let's get back to our demo. So I am on -2, one row inserted. Right here, 3. Now I am on gr2-1. I am gr2-2. Yeah. So even after like failing over from availability group from this server to this, our distributed availability group is not affected. Okay. So now what I'll do is I'm going to fail over the distributed availability group, and currently our database is read and writable on this server. So after failing over the distributed availability group, so this server will become the global primary, and this server will become the primary forwarder. Okay, so in order to do that, we have to run the command disconnect, reconnect, gr2-1, connected, gr2, right, and let's see. So this one is primary forwarder. Synchronize. So on this server, I'm going to tell SQL Server that here you have to fail over the availability group. But if you are doing the failover in production environment, make sure you change the mode synchronization from synchronization mode from asynchronous to synchronous to make sure the data is synchronized. And once you're sure the data is synchronized, you can do the failover. So that this one, I'm on control server and ran this command. Now I am on gr2-1. That's the failover command. So let's refresh the availability group and see. And here as well. Okay, and here as well. So it says primary distributed. Yeah. Now we'll see if the failover was done. So currently we have 3 rows in it. Let's delete a row. Delete from test equals to test. Okay, so row is deleted from gr2-1. That means this is our readable and writable copy. That means the failover of the distributed availability group was done. So now currently this one is your global primary and this one is your primary forwarder. So we deleted a row from this server. Let's verify the same on primary forwarder. Let's go over here to tables and we should, yeah. So the third row is gone and should be the same case on other replicas for control. Yeah. So this is how you do the failover of the distributed availability group. Yeah. Now we will fail back the distributed availability group. So currently, let's see, this is our primary forwarder, which is SQL 16-2, and this is our global primary, which is gr2-1. Yeah. So in order to fail back, we have to reverse the commands. So we ran this failover command on gr2-1 earlier and set secondary row on SQL 16-2. Now we are going to reverse this. So I will cut this command from here to paste it over here, and then cut this command from here to here. So basically we reversed the command. So first we have to tell this gr2-1 that you are going to become the secondary for distributed availability group. And before that, let me make sure we have everything is in synchronization. That's green. And let's go over here as well. That's also green. So now let's run this command on this server. Execute and failover from here to here. Oh, it will be failback. Okay. Okay. Let's refresh. And meanwhile, let's run this. Okay. Let's see if we can. Let's see what we have got here and make sure failover was done. Not. So let's try to insert a value. Insert to test values. XYZ. So I am on insert. I am on SQL 16-2. If the failover was successful, we should be able to insert this row. And yes, the row is inserted. Now let's see the same on primary forwarder. No, it says it's not accessible. Let's see what is on. That's primary. Okay, refresh the database. Let's see the dashboard. It's synchronizing. Oh, I know why it is. Go to properties, failover mode. Yeah, readable secondary, yes. Readable secondary, yes. Okay, now we should be able to read the data here. So do a select, and yeah, here we have XYZ. So this is how you can fail over the distributed availability group and fail it back. So this is the end of our demo. If you find this demo useful, please like the video and share it in your DBA group. Also subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon so that you will get notification next time when a video is uploaded. This will motivate me to keep uploading such videos. You have a good day and thanks for watching this video.